Now, going back to local dialects is the current posturing of the Education Ministry. The Minister, Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyemang, has asked the heads and teachers of basic schools to desist from the use of English language as the sole medium of instruction in the classroom. She noted that when this is done, when English language is introduced too early, it makes it difficult to prepare students adequately for higher academic learning. She therefore urged teachers to use the local languages as medium of instruction in the classroom and gradually introduce the English language after the local language has been fully developed. Now, so we are asking a number of questions this morning, and Anis Hafa is an educationist. He's joined me over the telephone. Most importantly, I have a parent here in the studio with me, Na Adua Ade. Thank you very much for. What do you think about this? You're a parent.
It's sort of funny because you realize that over the years, most parents, whether educated or uneducated, have started speaking English with their children. So the first language the child learns is English. Then the local language, so the vernacular, becomes second language. And now we are saying we should go back to the local language. My question is, which one are we going to use in the classroom?
I see. Now, that's a valid question. Let's have Anis share his thoughts as well. Anis, you're welcome to the program. Good morning to you, Anis. Anis, what do you think about this? Perhaps we should look into teaching our young ones with our local dialects before we introduce the English language.
Well, it depends on the setting. The first language can be the mother tongue. It can also be the language that the child speaks at home. The most important thing for us educators is to see how we can make the youngsters comfortable with what they have. So, if on one hand, the child comes to school, like what I've seen in the Samar district in the western region, is that they come and they all speak Fanti. English is not part of the scheme of things for them. So, in that particular context, we have to begin to start from the Fanti and begin to get them to understand the importance of language, period, through Fanti. And for example, I myself, I grew up in a village near Obuasi. We didn't speak English. We spoke Twi. So the first thing that the teacher did for us at the time was to help us to read and write Twi, books that we call the Epian School. So at the end of the first year, we could read and write Twi, and we could speak it. Now, English was a separate subject in itself. So by using the phonetics of the alphabets, we're able to now transition from Twi to English. But we're very comfortable in the sense that we were not berated by speaking a language that's new to us. Good. A language that was inherently with us from home. Now, the issue is that these days, in the cities, there are children who come to school already speaking English, and they might not necessarily know the mother tongue. So where do we start from there? The idea then is to continue with the language that a child is more fluent in and that's comfortable in. Remember, the crux of teaching young people is to make sure that they are comfortable and they feel confident in joining the process itself. Now, the other thing I also mentioned is this. I've done training in places like in Fanta, in the north, towards the Bimbala area. You won't believe this. In one classroom, there must have been about 10 or 12 different languages that were being taught there. That were being spoken in a typical classroom of about 30 or 40 students. So where did the teachers begin? That is the point. It's in the interest of the young people, it's always a good idea to teach them in a language that they feel comfortable in the beginning. But if it's a homogeneous class where everybody speaks one particular language, we can start from there. But invariably, in Ghana, we don't have homogeneous classes. We have heterogeneous classes, which means that different people come with different languages in the same classroom. At that point, how do we decide which mother tongue to begin the process with? That is the key. But then the other thing is that this business of finding the right language for instructional strategies is it's not only peculiar to Ghana. I remember when I was teaching in Los Angeles in a Spanish community, there was a debate. Do we start young people with English or do we start them with Spanish? And sometimes the parents themselves will tell you that I want you to go ahead and start English instructional strategies for the kid, or the others who prefer Spanish. So that is the debate. It will always go on. But my concern, though, is this. Young people have the inherent cognitive abilities to comprehend anything. The important thing is that how do we teach them? I've also been in the Middle East with elementary school students who can speak English, Arabic, Portuguese, and Armenian. You know, so we can never short circuit the possibilities of young people's cognitive ability to learn anything. But the point is, how do we teach them? I myself, when I was in secondary school, I studied French for 4 years, but I couldn't speak it. However, you can go to France and in 6 months or so begin to learn the language and speak it. So the methodology and the lab facilities, audiovisual equipment, hearing equipment, microphones, all these are very important in language acquisition.
Right. So, Anas, I want us to get into how we can apply this. Now, what we've been told is the fact that this is important if we want our children to excel when they get to higher education. Now, as a parent, she's here with me. Now, would you want your child to be taught in a local dialect?
It depends. Are you teaching him in Ga, in Chi, in Fanti, or in Ewe? He speaks Ga. If you are teaching him in Ga, fine. But then he doesn't know all the words in Ga. He's still developing the language. He's still a child. So which of the languages are we going to teach him? Are we going to confuse him, or are we going to develop his speaking skills? Because when he's home, he speaks Ga. He doesn't know Chi. What if his teacher is from the Northern Volta? He speaks Guan. How is the teacher going to communicate with the child? And that becomes the problem.
And so you don't think this can be helpful to children in Ghana?
Depending on where you find yourself. Like your other guest said, if we are within a community where we all speak the same language, all the teachers speak the same language, then there's a little bit of education that can go on. But then if we are all in Accra, where Accra is mixed up with everybody from everywhere, the teacher speaks Ewe. We have over 50 languages in the class. Who is going to understand who? Then we come back to the point. It has to be English. But the point is not the language, but how simple you make the lesson you are teaching the children. How you are able to impart your lesson to the children for them to understand. It can be done in English and they'll enjoy it. It can be done in Ga and they'll be totally confused.
So, Anas, what are we saying here? Is this possible and necessary, or perhaps impossible and unnecessary?
You know, the preferred situation is where if a child comes speaking English, we continue that way. And then other languages can be secondary. But if the language is Fanti that the kid comes with, then that is the handle to the kid. If it's P, that is the handle to the kid. If it's Ewe, that is the handle to the kid. If it's Ga, so be it. The important thing is that we don't want the children under any circumstances to lose their confidence. And the confidence is built in expression, expressing your views, expressing your thoughts, and interacting through a medium that you are most comfortable with. But like the lady said, the difficulty is where you are in a setting where there's Ga, there's Fanti, there's P, there's all these other languages in the classroom that is being taught in class 1 by a teacher who speaks yet another language. You know, these are
the other argument has been the fact that we haven't fully developed our local dialects, and teaching in our local dialects could pose grave challenges for the teachers themselves because we haven't fully developed it. Mind you, these children, when you teach them in the local dialect or instructions are given in the local dialect, will come out and meet those who were instructed or instructions were given to them in the English language to write the same exams in English.
But like I told you earlier, when I was in class 1 in Obuasi, we all spoke Tree, and the teacher was versatile in teaching Tree. So we're teaching Tree We are being taught Tree to read and to write in Tree, and to learn the phonetics that way. If in the central region, the teachers there, I'm sure, are very conversant in Fanti. I've seen classrooms there where all the children speak Fanti, the teacher speaks Fanti, so that would lend itself easier to start instruction that way. But when the classes are mixed, that is the issue. But the most important thing, though, which is what we cannot do, is that if you have, let's say, 10 different languages in a particular classroom, the best thing to do is to teach these 10 different languages, but it will be too expensive. We will not find the qualified people to do it. We will not have the laboratories where these things can be done. So we want to be very, for us to move on, we need to be very careful in terms of the imposition that we place on young people. So this is the dilemma. This is the dilemma, and it's going to be with us for a long time.
In other words, we would have serious challenges trying to implement this.
Oh yes. It will be very difficult to implement it. Except now let me qualify this. Except in the place where we have homogeneous classes. Homogeneous means that they all speak the same language. That one we can begin the mother tongue that way. Are you with me?
I'm with you.
If it's mixed, it will be very difficult. And then the other thing is that we need to have teachers who are qualified even to teach in that particular language.
But Alice, right now, I'm not sure how many books are written in Chi or Ga or Fanti or ever. And if we would want to instruct these children and broaden their knowledge in the local dialects, how we will manage to do that besides the teacher being in class to teach?
Now, that is a very valid point. But when I do training, one of the key things that I tell teachers who teach Ga is that write a textbook in Ga. Because we are there with the kids in the course of 1 year. If we pay attention to our instructional strategies and the methodologies and the exercises that we use, we can incorporate that into a book for Ga. It's the same thing with Chi. All the teachers who teach Chi to begin to take what they are doing very seriously and incorporate the contextual material, the reading materials, the exercises in that particular language in a book form. The same with Ever. The same with Fanti. Now, what we have to do, though, is that we have to begin to raise the quality of the teachers who teach the Ghanaian languages, because they are the ones who are going to write the books. And I suggest to everybody who teaches the Ghanaian language to begin to take it very seriously, because we don't want the culture to die out. The culture is very important. One of my own daughters were born in the U.S., but I brought them to Ghana to learn the Ghanaian language. These are the things that we have to take into consideration.
I see, but now you as a parent, what language do you speak with your children or your child?
We mostly speak Ga and English. You speak Ga, he responds in English. You speak English, he responds in Ga. So it's more like what he feels like speaking at a point in time.
I see. So you taught your child some English at home?
Not really.
But you've done come, go, stop. Oh, it's
that
okay.
Is it.
And
that is it. And that is what most parents are doing now. And that is where the challenge is. We speak a lot of Ga at home. Sometimes we also speak English, because you'll be there and you wonder, he says certain things in English and you wonder, where did he hear this? And he says other things in Ga and you're like, I've not used this word with him before. And then you'll be wondering, but then you realize that, and let me tell you, the first thing the headmistress asked when he entered school, in preschool, was, what language does he speak at home? And we said, we speak Ga. So there, they speak your local language with you, and gradually you pick up the English as you go on. So before you get to school going age, at least you've picked your local language and you've picked this. But then the children...
And this happened in preschool?
Preschool.
Okay.
But then you realize that when we go to our schools, then we have the no speaking of vernacular. Then the children are forced to speak English. So when they come home and you start speaking your native tongue with them,
teacher says no speaking of vernacular. Vernacular is wrong.
Teacher says we shouldn't speak that language, and then he goes back to English and he's speaking in English.
Alice, it brings me to you. What role can parents play in this?
Do your question again, please.
I'm asking, what role can parents play in teaching their children the local dialects? We don't want to lose that bit of us as well.
Now, that's a very important question, you know. For me, it was very important that my children spoke a Ghanaian language. So we emphasize that. It's also very important that they speak the English language too, because that's the language of business. That's the language of international transactions, and even to get into information from the internet and so on, it has to be in English. But we cannot let them lose sight of the fact that our mother tongues are very important. What my grandmother used to tell me, for example, was that, look, I don't have anything to give you. I don't have any money to give you. But I'm make sure I'm fancy, no more than man no control. No over there, if you the place where Casana Wayan Comocano, being in Asia, for what can Cassia, what can Fantasia, what can Brofasia. Children, that's my grandmother who never went to school. But what she was saying is this: take the mother language, the mother tongue very seriously. However, in your social interaction with other people, make sure that you pick their languages and study those as well, especially the English language, because in the future, that's what you're going to need for your career and vocation. So here, we are in a position where we have to, frankly, we have to teach as many languages to children as possible. The mother tongue is important, English is important, and so is French. But my point is that kids can learn anything, but we have to teach them properly. We have to have the right facilities. We have to have the right confidence. We need to have the right expertise. And children can learn anything. It's up to us as grown-ups in terms of where we go in the future.
I see. Anis, many thanks for your time this morning. Anis Halfa is an educationer. With me in the studio is now Adjoa Ade. She's a parent. We've been talking about the ministry's bid to ask basic school teachers to instruct in the local dialect. So what would you want from the ministry if that is the way we should go?
You see, there are lots of things that actually goes into teaching. I am privileged, for instance, to teach children's service in my church. You don't just present the story to them. There's a lesson, there's something you want them to take out of whatever you teach them. But then you have to be able to captivate their mind from the beginning of the lesson to the end. And that is what is more important. Whether we teach in local dialects or in English, it is sending the message across. And it goes beyond teaching in any of the local dialects. It's getting the attention of the children, because now realize that they are more interested in their phones, in their tablets, and all those things are taking up their mind. What the education ministry should do is maybe come together with the teachers, come together and find ways and means of getting the children, though they are using the technological gadgets, they should also be interested in what is being taught in class. That way, then we know we are learning. Because you find a child who speaks fancy with her grandmother, speaks tree with her dad, and speaks Gan with her mom.
I see.
So can they learn any other thing as well?
And I agree with you absolutely. Now, thank you very much for coming on the program. Now, Adjoa Ade is the parent, and we'll be talking about whether or not we should instruct our children in our local dialects. Now,